Now, just by way of introduction, not just to the specifics, the details, but to talk to the broader purpose of this session. Within the school, we have ongoing classes. A student can turn up and attend. Maybe you come to a class or two classes, whatever. Some of you will have work at higher levels in the school, greater levels of engagement. Maybe some of you are practicing every day. What this school aims to do, and it comes from I would say it mirrors something of my learning experience. For most of my learning, I have worked on my own for 11 months, and then I go to India and I would go for a month. I practice, I attend, I be a student, and then I not always take things that I'd learned specifically, although all of my trips to India, I took notes. But then at some point I come back. What I remember, usually what I remember was the things that I wrote down. Mostly when you make notes, they're the things that you already remember. So I rarely look at my notes, but I would practice. What I found through that process is that I was forced to clarify things myself, because I couldn't turn up tomorrow morning and go back and say, I'm sorry, I don't understand that, or to have follow through. I was there for a window in time, and then I returned to work on my own. So it was a process in which I had to clarify, and things that I did not know, did not understand, I was made to sit with. I had to sit with the unknowns. I look at that and I think, actually, that's not just a story about how I learned, it's actually a story about learning. And it's a question about, how do we learn? How do we know what we know, is the way it's sometimes phrased. I know something because of an authority. Someone who knows all about this, and I stand behind them. I stand behind their knowledge. In yoga, there are three forms of knowing. The first of them, pramana, knowledge, which I'll call, pramana is valid knowledge. The first of them is knowledge from experience. I know something because I have experienced it. The second form of knowledge is testimony. I know something because of trusted sources. And the third form of knowledge is inference. I cannot see a black hole in the universe. I cannot see a black hole, but from the behavior of the objects around it, I can say that something exists. Direct experience, testimony, inference. The second of these, testimony, is quite important. People think testimony, I'll believe it. My teacher said, it's what I do. But I argue that testimony only has validity in that a teacher or a text says, here, do this, and you will find that. And my job is to verify the statement. That's how I think of testimony. Testimony, I've got a very nice example of it it's in a book called Richard King, I think it's just called Indian Philosophy. And he says, a friend of yours comes back from holidays and says, I've just been to Central Australia, and he said, I saw a camel. And you've never heard of a camel. And you say, what's a camel? He said, oh, you wouldn't believe him. It's like a horse, but it's got these really big clumpy feet and it's got a hump on the back and it stores water in the hump. And, you know, it can go in the desert, sandy deserts, it can live for weeks without water. And it's got a long neck. So it's a horse, it's got a long neck, clumpy feet and water stored. And you go, you're pulling my leg. It's a joke. Nothing like that could exist. You can believe or disbelieve your friend until one day you go to Central Australia and then over some hill trots this thing and you go, a camel. I know it's a camel because it's consistent with the description. It's consistent in my experience. You don't say, that's a big dog, because now a camel exists in possibility, but it's not a belief. It only exists when you experience a camel, and then you can recognize it. So the argument for testimony, in my opinion, is that anything that is said should be able to be understood in your experience. That is a practitioner's role. I do not believe in yoga. I do not believe what you say. I don't have to stand here and disbelieve you. Why would I disbelieve you? But I need to verify it in my experience. I may find that when I practice, that I find different things, or it's murky, or it's not clear. I go again and go again. But the fact that somebody has said, this is possible, I become expansive rather than I seek. I would say I become expansive rather than petty. Petty seeks to argue, bicker, and discredit. Expansive is, okay, there's something being said. What is it? And the key point is in my experience. So I'm going to say it once again. Pramana. It's called, it's actually often translated as correct or valid knowledge. I call it direct perception. You can only know things through your experience. 3 forms: direct experience, testimony, and inference. Inference is often described as, I cannot see my mind. I say, I have a mind, and you say, show me, prove it to me. And I go, look, I can't show you my mind, but I can show you through my behaviors. We watch you, and you are at home, I don't know, one of those, through your doorbell, we spy on you. I believe that's possible. And we spy on you, and you come home, and you enter the house, you put your bag down, and you go to the fridge, and you eat. And I say to my colleague, hungry. We cannot see your hunger, but by your behaviors, we can see that you're hungry. I know it's more complicated than that. Tired, you sleep. You this, you that. Via the behaviors, we know that something motivates you. What is that thing? Now, that's inference. You might say, I don't believe it unless you show it to me. That's a question. You cannot believe in your mind, but the evidence that you are confronted with is that something motivates you. The 3 forms of valid knowledge are absolutely embedded in all that I've got here in front of me. Pranayama is a complex practice. Iyengar would say, used to say, teach people asana before you teach them pranayama, because you prepare them, you culture them, and you deliver them the skills to undertake the practice. And the reason why he said that is that it is a subjective practice. When I lie here and do pranayama, or when you lie here and do pranayama, and you say, I give you a whole lot of instructions, and you say, am I doing it? Am I doing, you ask the teacher, is this right? And my answer to that would be, is it? ? Back to you. My opinion on your experience is you looking to validate yourself. Is this correct? Most teachers will send you back to look again, because what they're doing is creating. I take a statement, I apply it in my practice. What do I experience? I compare it. I go again. It's a clarification principle. A statement, applied, experience, compare. That provides you with feedback. It's generally done through repetition. So we could have, as I do in the school, I have a weekly class. It happens every Wednesday, 10 a.m. People either attend or enroll in that class and do the recording after. And I'm using that model week by week. Rarely do I use a whole lot of equipment. And increasingly, you'll see me, I'll probably say, today we'll use a cushion. And I'm trying to, I make a statement, do it this way, you apply it, you have an experience, listen. The words of a teacher are statements. They are, in essence, a teacher for the student. A teacher is testimony. It is not to be believed, it is to be verified. Through repetition, again and again and again, whether you're in the classroom listening week by week or go home as I did for 11 months, and I got clear, not about what they were saying, but I got clear about my experience. Iyengar would then say, if my experience corresponds to what was said, fact. If my experience led me somewhere else I got clear about, that's what I teach. Now, that's his method. That's his method of getting clear. The practice of pranayama, however, is deeply subjective. How can I think I feel this, how can I be sure? And the tools of practice help us. Now, worth me saying, these reflective practice series, reflective practice is different to a classroom. A classroom is, I'll just set up and say, here, let's go, let's move. I'm operating as testimony. But in reflective practice, it's I have space or time. So I've created this window. I don't teach a class of this duration, this length in pranayama regularly. I'm normally just moving through patterns and sequences week by week. But here we have a chance to sometimes listen, think about things, and over time, I may get you to do things and then feed back to me. So these reflective practice sessions, pranayama, twice a term on the Sunday. Last night, there was a reflective practice on philosophy where we come together and take time to think about something. I'm seeing these as part of the life of the school, and I'll say they are a dimension or an adjunct to our ongoing classes. So you want to get taught asanas, you want to get taught pranayama, do the classes. To reflect upon what we do, to think about why we do what we do, these things. So I'm happy for us. Why I give more time is so that I will sit here and talk about the whys, and I'll maybe think about some of the bigger questions. Another point, which again, the Yoga Sadhana booklet is the student guide to this school, to how this school operates. It's also I describe it as a home reader for the Yoga Sutras. It's taking important themes in the sutras, it's presenting them in a way for the student body, for you, the student body, to be able to say, okay, he talks about these things. How can I follow up? Sadhana is full of statements and footnotes either to articles or references that you can go and find, and most of it you can get. Some of the material that I use is more difficult to get hold of, but we've moved all of our study material, we're migrating it onto Yoga Vidya. And so it's going to become, over the next 2 years, that resource material will both be extensive, but I can tell you, I can guarantee that it exists nowhere else. The depth and the breadth of that material is not found elsewhere. Today we're going to be looking at setups, but the way I handle setups is absolutely how I've just described it. If I said to you, here we're going to look at this and this is why we do it, now look at that, this is why we do that, I would be stepping away from my statements. What I'll do shortly is I'll say set up and do it, and now modify it and do that. And I'm asking you to differentiate. Do it this way, do it that way. And at first you might go, well, I look at these two and I go, they're a pair, they're the same. And then I say, no, slow down, look closely. And you say, that line is longer than that. I can say that the line in that palm is longer than that because there are two of them. If I said to you, here, look at that, you wouldn't say, oh, that line is longer, because it has to be longer than something. You might say it's long. And I say, how do you know it's long? And you'll say, look at mine. Or it's short. I can say that line is longer than that because there are two. If I set you up in pranayama with a cushion along your back body, if I set you up with a bolster along your back body, I won't ask you, which of these do you like? I'll say, what do you feel? And then I might say, what does it do to your breathing? When there is only one, it's hard to be clear. When there's two, you can say, that one does this one does that. And so it draws you, it gives you the ability to differentiate. Somewhere in his writings, Iyengar has this very nice, tight little statement. He says, asana is a comparative study. You can look at that one, you can look at that one. But what it teaches you is not, how's that different to that? It teaches you how to look beyond the image of the thing, to look more closely. Those skills are essential in pranayama. When I teach pranayama, I use these, what I call tools, to help you to feel what's going on. And it assumes that most people find it hard to feel and differentiate. Most people, when they first start, find it hard and they think it's something wrong with them. And I always like to say, if you started with the observation that this is difficult, then you don't have to turn yourself into, see yourself as deficient. To get quiet, for your mind not to get busy, distracted, to go to sleep, you need to lower your nervous system. You need to then start to settle yourself, not your thoughts about something, but the feeling within. The tools of practice are assets. They are designed to help you. So yoga sadhana, at the back of that, I've put in all the tables from Light on Pranayama. And I put them in there because when you go to Light on Pranayama and try to find them, they're just scattered throughout the book. It's really, someone wants to be systematic in pranayama. It's quite difficult. What I did when I was first starting to practice back in the 80s, I had an exercise book, which is kicking around somewhere here. And I drew them out, got a ruler, drew them out, because I just needed to be able to go, I'm about to practice, and if I've got to find books, open them, look up things, I just thought, can I just get the information? Exercise book. At some point, I put them in here. And I have a copy of this by my desk. I don't want to remember what Ujjayi 12 is. I just go, right, Ujjayi 12, it's these things. Whether you get sadhana is completely up to you. But having a bigger picture is essential. Otherwise, you're just always stuck in little details. And the real problem is the authority sits outside you. Somebody knows what's going on. And I go, that's not good enough for a practitioner. You need to start to absorb that picture. You need to absorb the range of practice, the practice methodologies, and that's sort of what I'm trying to do. With students, I try to transfer the principles that I'm applying as well as the details. Because if you can understand the principles, then you can both modify them. Maybe you say, okay, he's holding things for 7 minutes. I find that really stressful. Maybe I'll go to 4 minutes. So once you know if there's a line down the middle of this room, you can say, I'm going to be this side or that side of the line. But unless you have a definition, who knows where you are? So, pranayama setups. What we're going to start with is we're going to start, if I give us, it is an image, and if I give us, if you look at light on pranayama, he uses wooden blocks. And he has a number of these flat, then he steps them. What I particularly like about that system, and in this case, I'm not using wood. These things we use are shoulder stand cushions. 2 of them side by side create a very nice platform for shoulder stand. I'll say in the old days, although not necessarily, but a 3-fold blanket is similar in size. What I like about this is that it's quite firm. Iyengar in Light on Pranayama, it's wood. He just says, that's it, Now, there are a number of things here. If I stay with that, I'm about to clear a little bit of the equipment so the visual is less cluttered. That's that one. 3 steps. So the foundation, the base, second, third step. We can modify them. So I often in my tools for practice, I may combine things. I could put a blanket here and we could get a little higher. I can differentiate heights. But I think what is going on here? When the pelvis is down and we lift the chest. If I go pelvis and ribs, if I lift the spine, I lift the chest. This distance, the length of your abdomen increases. There you are lying flat. If I lift you a long way up in the chest, the hypotenuse gets longer. What does that mean? The abdomen gets longer. The only way the abdomen will get longer is if you relax the muscles of your abdomen. So that, relax your abdomen. The volume of the abdomen is stretched. The pressure in the abdomen decreases. And your diaphragm can move more freely. So Iyengar, and I want to comment here. He was, to my mind, extraordinary because he created these ways of working based on what he found. Now, whether he found that in himself or when he tried to teach students, were his students all tense? Were they all doing weights or whatever they were doing? And he says, you're not breathing well because your diaphragm has no room. And for some reason, he goes home and says, here, I'll get a bit of wood and lie on it. I lift the rib cage, I lengthen the abdominal wall, the volume, the stretch of the abdomen goes down and the diaphragm can move more freely. Support behind the head as needed. So the first point is he creates these steps. We can do them in different ways and we will. But the second point that I think is equally significant here is the firming of the back body. There are two words you'll hear me use. One is the word, to channel and regulate. You'll hear me talk about channeling and regulating. Channeling is a reference to the word bund. A bund is a block or seal. In monsoon India, the rain all falls at a certain period of the year. It hits the ground and runs off. So a farmer creates furrows. The water hits the ground, it runs, it enters the furrows, and then when that one is full, I put a bund, a block. I stop the water going down, it runs into the next channel. Classically, they're a big stone. So you'll see, in monsoon India, you'll see these stones, you'll often see the stone at the end, on the edge of the field. But when the rain hits, you're out there into that furrow. A bund creates resistance and redirects energy. Water for the farmer or energy. Classically in pranayama, there are bandhas. I create an internal grip to limit and redirect or channel. I use the word channel. So when I lie on this support, as we will in a moment, I'm going to lie on that support and the back body, the ribs are lifted, but the back body is firmed. When I breathe, when you breathe, your ribs expand on all sides. But when I increase the resistance, I can redirect energy. So for a lot of people, this setup, firm across the back body, may be the first time you start to feel your ribs move to the side.